EC fam, man, every Friday I love getting with you. It is Alive with Pastor Akil, where we sit down and we have fun filled, faith filled conversations that are really going to help us navigate this 21st century in a way that glorifies Jesus Christ. Really, what we're talking about is how can we experience the extraordinary life that Jesus Christ died for all of us to experience. And so we're so excited about today's conversation. If you don't know, Extraordinary Church is the perfect church for imperfect people. And so I want to encourage you to do a couple of things. One, if you haven't already, you need to get something to drink. Get your tea, your coffee, a big jug of water like I have actually completely gone through, refilled. And then two, I want you to think about sharing one. Tag somebody in this if you're watching via Facebook, or share this with somebody via YouTube, because what we're talking about today is going to help you and bless you. About discovering rest in a busy world. How many of us need to have conversations like this because we are busy? And my man, Pastor Joumeel McLaurine, who is with us, pastoring a fantastic church plant, Ascend, out of Michigan. Royal Oak in particular is with me. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing well today, sir. How about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm so glad that you're with us. And what's really cool about this is often you and I will connect. And for me, this is like the highlight of my week, especially since you're a guest, because we have such meaningful conversations and you add such value to my life. I just, every time we get off the phone, I'm like, yeah, my life is better because Joumeel is in it. And so I have no doubt, bro, I cannot tell you how excited I am to introduce you to the EC fam. EC fam, y'all just put your seatbelts on. You about to be blessed. You about to be blessed. How's V and the kids?
Everybody's beautiful. So we've got our son Jakin, who's almost 3, and also the reason that I am hauled up in this particular room that I am, because if you're in any other room, he would be joining us for the whole entire time. And,
Good.
he's just moving around as fast as he can go. And then our 1-year-old, she's just beautiful, really. And then we've got another baby on the way, and so I'm doing well. But my wife is doing excellent. But I'm sure with her pregnancy, she could always be doing a little better. So
Yeah,
but
yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
everybody's doing excellent.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that the family's growing, and uh, I can't wait to put my loving arms around those
Yes,
babies and see them. It's been a while. It's been a while.
it's been
Listen,
too,
everybody. Huh?
it's
What'd
been
you say?
too long. It's been way too long.
Bro, it's this COVID craziness. It's this COVID craziness. So I am so done with COVID. Let me just say this to my EC fam and friends that are watching. We want to hear from you, so we encourage you to engage. And so if something resonates within you, let us know. What we're talking about today is something that everybody can relate to, Pastor Jay, whether
Yes,
it's deadlines, kids' activities, taking up the weekend, the task, the overtime. You're helping with school, you're volunteering in ministry, whatever it might be. And then people are wondering, well, when am I going to slow down? And when do I have time for
yeah,
myself? And so I want to talk about rest today. I really believe this is going to help a lot of people because people are just frazzled, man. And tired faith or tired bodies produce tired faith. So I want to hear from you. Whatever the religious minds thought about the Sabbath and what it should look like, the reality for Jesus, it was quite different. How
yeah.
do you think Jesus celebrated the Sabbath?
Yeah, well, and I do want to say this first of all. So honored. I can't tell you how much I admire and respect you. You're one of the greatest leaders I believe in I should say in the country, but now you're out of the country, so I've got to say the world technically.
Well,
And so I'm honored to be here. I think what's interesting about the theme of Jesus and the principle of rest and Sabbath is that I think we've gotten so far away from the context of the pace of the life of Jesus that it's hard for us to even depict it. There's of course the good books like Addicted to Busy, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry that kind of paint a lot of these pictures, but I think if I were to describe, I heard one writer say, if you were to describe Jesus with one word, the word would not be powerful. The word would not just be strong, which those are true. The word would be rested. The word would
Uh,
be like full. And when I think about when you kind of start looking at the narrative of Jesus in a theme like rest and Sabbath, I think the first place that people go to is the time where kind of the legalistic Pharisees were coming after him about the principle of, healing on the Sabbath. And in Mark chapter 2, he
yeah.
said, the Sabbath was made for man, not the man for Sabbath. And we get on that, well, the man wasn't made for Sabbath, not recognizing that the first half of the verse is, but Sabbath was made for man.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think when you really look at the life of Jesus, it's marked by a pace that was so slow that it was frustrating to those that were around him. Whether it was him sleeping on the boat, right? Whether it was him being late to heal Lazarus,
Yes.
he moved at a pace that was, whether it was him withdrawing from the crowd to rejuvenate after some of his greatest ministry stories, his pace was so slow that others were frustrated about it. And so I think Sabbath and rest. I think when you really look at that word Sabbath, Shabbat, it's a word that describes a day, but it also describes a theme of restfulness. It describes a theme of rejuvenation and fulfillment. And I don't think you can look at the life of Jesus and not see the theme of Shabbat very clearly, and also on a practical, physical, tangible sense. There were no recorded there was nothing recorded on the last 7 days on the Sabbath, the right before Jesus, went and was died and buried and resurrected. There was a marked clarity of Jesus consistently living out the theme of and the principle of Sabbath, but also the actual practice of Sabbath. And
Of
so
rest.
that's kind of what I would think when it comes to Jesus and the principle of Sabbath and rest.
Man, I love that because, and you're so true. And almost in every sense, when you read the scriptures and you look at the life of Christ, the disciples are in this hurried pace, this
Yeah,
hurried pace to take over. When are you going to set up the kingdom? When are you going to set up the
yeah,
kingdom? When are you
yeah,
going to, it's now, is it now, is it now, is it now, is it now?
yes,
You're absolutely right. The pace and cadence of Jesus was so different than humanity in that sense. And he is
right,
rest. So, I love that. I love that. Now, here is something. Let's make this really practical because life is crazy for everybody, whether they're a college student,
yeah,
whether they're a young professional, young family, even for those folks that are retired. I said it. Even retired folks are like, Pastor Akil, I am busy. I am trying to keep up. So, what I want to know is, how do you find rest?
yes. Well, I think that that word rest, I've almost put it synonymous with the principle of Sabbath. And we can talk about it in two different themes. And I apologize, my computer is got to be plugged in, and this wall will not.
Get it plugged in
Yes,
because it's going to take some rest, and then it will lose.
yes. I apologize.
It's all good, my friend.
So, yeah. So, uh, the way that we live out that principle around here, we take the principle of rest in four different categories. We have a yearly rhythm. We try to have a quarterly rhythm, a monthly rhythm, and a weekly rhythm. And
Mm,
I'll break it down to the day, and I'll share some of my contemplative principles there. But
okay.
on a yearly basis, we really do believe in taking the sabbatical, the vacation on a bigger level. Honestly, we're even exploring ideas right now. If you kind of read the biblical context of the word sabbatical, they let the land rest every 7 years. Ministers rested every 7 years. There's
You're right.
denominations that actually require their ministers to take a extended sabbatical every 7 years to align with the biblical principle. And so we're digging into that. But on a yearly basis, we try to take a trip with the family that's affordable, that fits our season, that we just unplug. On a quarterly basis, something that I do that I kind of stole from my dad is I take a time away, a day away, and I might stay away for an entire day or an entire night. And I take nothing but a journal and I
Mm.
spend time just contemplating with the Lord, praying, seeking the face of God, and writing down what I feel. That's incredibly restful for me. Um,
Wow.
on, on a monthly, so quarterly, I try to do that for actually kind of a overnight type of deal. On a monthly basis, there's a rhythm of that day away that I do, and it's not maybe an overnight deal, but it's just a day where I say, hey, I'm really going to completely unplug, leave my physical location on the principle of rest. And then, of course, on a weekly basis, we follow the principle of Sabbath. We've done it on Mondays in the past, but really in this season, we do it on Saturdays. So from 6 o'clock on Friday night, starting tonight at 6 o'clock until tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we are completely off the grid.
Off
And
the grid.
off the
Now,
grid. Yeah,
now, when you say off the grid, do you mean like you're not on social media, or you turning your phone on do not disturb? Talk to me about off the grid. Are you like really
yes,
going dark?
yes. So for the most part, yes. So I will say this: for the last year, I've had a dumb phone, which made off the grid a little easier.
Yeah.
So I just got back in the iPhone world about a week ago. But when I say off the grid, yeah, we turn off our notifications on our phone. We try to stay away from media as much as possible. I wouldn't say we're perfect at that, but we really do stay away from anything media related on that whole day. And the most part, anything that would indicate work or thinking of work. And one writer said, it's not just resting from work, but it's resting from the worry of work. And so
Wow.
anything that I can do that triggers, because there are things that trigger work, right? There's certain books that I can read, podcasts I can listen to, people that,
That's good.
conversations I can have. Even on those days, if I talk to a friend, we don't talk about things that can relate to work, right?
Yeah.
And rest for us really looks like a true unplugging. It really looks like a true stepping away, and it's something that I really find to be that Sabbath principle to be incredibly rejuvenating and essential to living fulfilled. So I know we're going to dig into some more questions on that, but I do want to just pause and say this.
Say
You know,
it.
it's funny because we think about like a holiday, right? A holiday
Sure.
is a day we set apart for a specific celebration, and we don't ever think it's legalistic to say, "Oh, well, every year on December 25th we schedule Christmas," right?
It's
We go
right.
stress and strain and headache and spend money we don't have to celebrate the same day every year. But when it comes to the weekly rhythm of Sabbath, it's like, whoa, 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 preacher, you're being legalistic. You're doing the most, and my wife and I really had to overcome that guilt and that shame, that kind of common culture,
Mm.
North American culture is promoted about business, to really enjoy the principle of rest, and
Wow.
through the lens of Sabbath. So does that answer your question?
No, it does. And here's what I can say and attest to.
Mhm.
Whenever you and I connect, even right now, praise God, I feel rested. And I mean this sincerely, in that you can have conversations with certain people, and you
Mhm.
feel hurried. You feel like things are moving at a frenetic pace, and maybe even sometimes that we miss connecting with
Yeah.
people because we don't even slow down to enjoy much of anything. Um, and you have actually challenged me, and which is why I was like, I want to bring Pastor Jay on here if he's more willing to do so. I said we got to talk about rest, because even and I look at my own life, I'm like, man, I've got to take time out for a Sabbath. Not only is it for my benefit, but it's for my marriage, for my family, and even for the extraordinary church family. So this is so good in that regard. So here's something that I had to ask myself, and it kind of brings this. I'm curious to see what you think, but is the root cause of our busyness to make ourselves feel wanted or valued by someone? And why can we not see that God values us just for being who we are?
Yeah.
And why in the world do we even struggle with that, especially as believers? What's your take there?
Yeah. I think we've lost the principle of margin in general.
Wow.
And we could go through the financial sector, the 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 current debt crisis that has been exposed through
Yeah.
COVID is actually a new crisis. Our grandparents did not borrow money like that. There was a
Um,
certain level of margin that was built in the ethos of society, right?
yeah.
You live paycheck to paycheck. You only spend what you have and you save first and live on the rest. That was part of the ethos and the culture. And over the last 50 years, through the financial sector, the principle of debt, of get it now, pay for it later, has
Yep.
become so prevalent that the theme of margin, which ultimately I believe that Sabbath and rest is what it produces emotional and spiritual margin in our life. It's dissipated from society, right? We want to live now, work now, and pay for it later. I'll sleep when I die, right?
That's the truth.
And we're bucking, and so there's this bucking of the principle, and honestly, they're principles and precepts of God, right? You go to the Bible. Oh man, I'll take a quick detour here. I was doing a deep study randomly last year during the pandemic of the book of Leviticus. Start studying those 7 feasts that the Lord asked for the Israelites to set apart for Him, and yet, in those feasts, He starts saying every single one of them. He says, "I want you to give me a day of rest, a day of Sabbath," and
Wow.
God called a party rest.
Yeah.
When God asked for a celebration, when He said, I want to celebrate. I want you to thank me for all the things that I've done. He said, I want you to rest, commemorate it. These are principles of the Lord,
Yeah.
margin, right? And I
Yeah.
think over the last 50 years, the pace, and I think it's only been exasperated by social media and yes, the seeking of validation, and I think that's been discussed. But I think the dissipating in culture of the general principle of margin, whether it's
Mm,
mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and you and I have seen it in ministry, right? The guys that minister uh, give spiritually at the same pace as they're intaking, right?
yeah.
And and I think the loss of that principle of margin in our lives has spilled over from the financial sector to the emotional sector, the spiritual sector, and now this kind of rat race that we are on to get everything we can now and sleep when we die has really erased these contemplative principles and practices of Sabbath and rest and margin. So does
You're
that
absolutely
does that does that help? Does that make sense?
Bro, that makes a ton of sense. And so much so that I would say that we're not even, you mentioned kind of these contemplative uh, 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 principles. We don't even contemplate anymore.
Mm.
And how one generation, our parents, or I'm going to go back a little bit, our grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about living within means. This is one reason why when we would go and spend time with grandma, I called her Big Mama, but you just felt at peace.
Yes.
There wasn't this hurry because there were boundaries that insulated or protected or created margin. It
Yeah.
was kind of like, the TV wasn't blaring. It was like you going to play checkers and praise God. And you didn't want to run out to go get fast food. You wanted grandma's cooking and you wouldn't mind waiting for grandma's cooking. There was just a different cadence, a different rhythm and pace to life. And if we're not careful, you're right, that hurried pace will really wear us down. And that's one of the things spiritually that a lot of Christians and believers, we don't necessarily realize we're self inflicting some wounds. I know it's the enemy's job to weary the saints, but we're helping him.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
We got to slow down. And so I love you unpacked why people struggle with that. So here is kind of as we get ready to land this plane, and I know this is helping a lot of people. I want to hear from you in this regard. Do you encourage people? You're pastoring a thriving church community, professionals, so many different demographics. But when you sit down and talk with people, and even the inventory you and V took with yourselves, do you encourage people to take an inventory of their time usage, and how can that help them, and to realize, yeah, I need some rest, man.
Yeah, yeah. So I do, and I specifically encourage people. I honestly I encourage a lot of young couples. I'll give kind of the framework I use there, and then
Sure.
I also encourage singles to do as well. But with couples, I really encourage to have a weekly meeting with your spouse. So date
Yeah,
night, my wife and I's date night is not just a date night; it's also a business meeting.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And yes, we try to we try to make it romantic, and there will be times when we get off the cuff, but there's also a business meeting part to it where we are evaluating and taking inventory, and at least once a month in that dinner or that date night slash meeting, we actually have a framework of an inventory that we kind of go through that evaluates how we're spending our time, evaluates how we're doing emotionally, spiritually, all that. So kind of the framework I give is that for a marriage, I encourage people to kind of evaluate, hey, how are we doing socially,
Yeah,
emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially?
I love
And
it.
taking the time to kind of go through that framework and say, hey, how, even emotionally, hey, how are we spending our time right now? Are we doing things that fill us, right? Or are we just, spending time, watching something that drains us, right? So
Mm,
having framework to examine how you're doing in these different areas and specifically how your time investment is feeding into these things or not. For instance, on the financial part, we'll talk about, hey, have we scheduled the time to proactively talk about our finances? Or are we being reactive right now? We actually just had that conversation, my wife and I, last night. So I really do encourage people to do that kind of on a weekly basis, have a rhythm of that, and then on a monthly basis, take out a even larger chunk to have that conversation in much more of a thorough way. And then with singles, I encourage kind of that same thing to make sure that they have that weekly Sabbath where there is time of contemplation, have a contemplative weekly rhythm where even if you're single, you spend a few hours with a journal out thinking about your time usage and then making sure that whether it's monthly or quarterly. I have a guy at our church right now that's about to take a few days to do what I talked about earlier in this conversation. Take a few days just to journal, be with the Lord, and think big vision, big picture. And we do encourage people to kind of set aside some time and evaluate their
yes.
week, their last month, their last quarter, and then proactively plan going ahead.
Bro, I love that we do something similar. As a matter of fact, we have a family night now. I just recently we've always had a family night Monday
Yeah.
evening. We do this EC. Nothing happens on the calendar. We encourage every family shut it down, spend time with one another, and we've chosen to make our Sabbath on Monday.
Yeah.
And that the last few weeks. This is something brand new that we're stepping into, and so it's really stretched us. But here's what my wife and I have done. We've always been planners. We sit down and we literally have a family meeting
That's it.
every day with the crew, especially now that our kids are older and they're teenagers. We not only talk through the day, we talk through the week and what's happening. And here's what I found. It's not just a checkbox or, oh, that was done. Really engaging and seeing where they are, seeing where we are emotionally, socially, how
Yeah.
we're connected. It's not just, oh, yeah, everything's fine. Let's put a little bit more language on that. Let's be a
Yeah.
bit more, what's the word, descriptive, if you will.
Yeah.
And so we actually even have a family planner that we did at EC that we shared with our families that would get them in the rhythm of meeting on a weekly basis. And EC fam, if you didn't get that planner, holler at us, DM us, email us, and we'll certainly get that to you. I love that. You and I were talking. This is totally off the script,
Yeah.
but I want you to unpack this because this blessed me. I need you to talk about when you switched from Sabbath as rest to also something you delight in.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That was like, okay, that's what got me. See, like you messed me up when we were talking, and you were like, bro, you're looking at this wrong because I'm like, I gotta this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then And like you mentioned, you're getting distracted, but it's like, wait a second, Sabbath, delight.
yeah,
Messed me up. Talk to us a little bit about that because I thought you might bring it up, but since you didn't, I'm gonna get that thing out of you. Talk to us about
yeah. So I think what's amazing, and again, this was really birthed out of some study that I did in the last year, but I think what's amazing is when you read the Old Testament context of how Sabbath was inserted by God to the people, it was often again tied to celebration. It was
Yeah.
tied to something that was a jubilee party. I mean, we celebrate Pentecost, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yes. Yeah.
read in Leviticus the context of when Pentecost was that feast was introduced and implemented by God, I'm telling you, the Old Testament, at time after time after time, I kept catching it. Hey, I want you to Sabbath. I want you to rest.
Wow.
Funny because these are things that God's trying to provide to us. He's trying to give us for our enjoyment. He's wanting us to lighten it. And it's almost like, hey, you want a donut? And we're like, why? That's too legalistic.
Yeah.
That's too legalistic. I can't. I got too much to do to eat a donut. It's like,
Yeah.
no, this is
Right.
something that I'm giving you
Mm.
for enjoyment. And I by the way, I'm a big fan of doing Sabbath on Mondays. Our rhythm right now with some work schedule stuff does not allow for us to do that in this particular season, but I'm a big fan because it was supposed to be something you rested for the week in preparation for the week, not from the week. It was not something that you just fell into on the weekend. That's a North American term, weekend,
Stay
right?
there. Stay there for a minute. Unpack that just because this has changed me in this
Um,
regard. So unpack that a
yeah,
little bit.
it's not. I work myself to a tizzy until I can't go anymore. So now I'm gonna lay down and rest from the week. I'm exhausted. It's
Yeah.
no. I'm going to proactively delight in the Lord and rest for the week, and make sure that I'm coming into this week from a place of fulfillment and
Mm.
joy and delight in the Lord. Right.
Amen.
There's a huge. I couldn't go into it all today, but there is a little bit of a framework where it's like, hey, you refrain from working, from worrying, from wanting, right? That's what you
Mm.
refrain from, and then on the
Wow.
Sabbath day, it's all about resting. It's about delighting. It's about worshiping and stopping, right? And I just think if you have those principles, kind of, these are what I refrain from, but this is what I'm leaning into, and delighting is part of God's original plan for rest and for Sabbath specifically.
Man, I love that. Even refrain from wanting. Golly, this is so good. EC fam, I hope that you have been blessed by this conversation. I want you to do me a favor, share it with someone and then more importantly, not only do we want you to share it with someone, I want you to just kind of take inventory yourself and see where you are and ask yourself, where do I need to build in? And really understand that God has gifted me a Sabbath rest.
Yeah,
And finding that rest and delighting in Him is going to really change your paradigm. It's going to refresh you. It's going to refresh your family. And you're going to discover that the joy of the Lord is really your strength.
man.
We look forward to seeing you this Sunday. Pastor Joumeel, thank you so much for taking a moment to invest in what God is doing here. We love you big and we appreciate you all. And this Sunday, EC fam, at 1 and at 3. If you have not registered, the 1 is slam full. And I think we have like 8 or 9 seats available in the 3. Get to that 3 o'clock. God is moving, and we can't wait to see you in person. It's been great. God bless you guys. Take care.